I'm Cassie Carlson, joined by Fox Sports Radio's Carmen Vitali, and we are getting this show started by talking about the NFL. Coaching vacancies filling up. 2 more need to be filled. You look at kind of what Mike Vrabel, Ben Johnson, Liam Cohen have all done in their first season, bringing their teams to the playoffs, and Vrabel obviously going to the Super Bowl with his second-year quarterback, Drake May. Now you're looking at all these other coaches who are getting opportunities. Who do you feel like is going to have the most impact in their first year?
It's interesting because I think obviously you can look at some of the head coaches there and you're like, there's going John Harbaugh, for instance, at the Giants. I mean, that's the easy one, right? Is like, he's a longtime head coach. He knows what he's doing, and this is a franchise that needs it. But I want to look at more some of the coordinator level hires because I think the process to hiring Mike McDaniel in Los Angeles was very interesting in that there was almost a contingency handshake deal like, hey, we want to hire you as our offensive coordinator, but we're also not going to stop you from interviewing for other head coaching jobs, which is not something I've really ever heard of. And to me, that kind of signals the Chargers being like, hey, this is our guy. We want him really bad, because if he doesn't ultimately go to Los Angeles, that kind of puts them behind the hiring cycle for offensive coordinators, but they were willing to take that risk because they wanted him so badly. And selfishly, outside of just the pairing of Mike McDaniel and Justin Herbert, which I'm so excited for, I'm excited for the pairing of the Chargers social team and Mike McDaniel.
They're going to have plenty of fun with him.
We've already started seeing it, some of the interviews that have come out with Mike McDaniel. I mean, he is just such a character. And I think that team in Los Angeles has so much freedom to do so many fun things. Chargers social has always been amazing. And now I just feel like they really sync up.
The Jags offensive coordinator had a similar thing going too, it seemed. They were like, all right, we want him back. He was interviewing for the Browns job as well. It was the Browns job that no one apparently wanted. Now Todd Monken gets it. So I feel like that is an interesting point. And I saw you write about that on Twitter, just being like, all right, so they're going to do all these deals like, all right, we want you if you don't get your if you don't get your main choice.
Right, which is not, we're used to this industry being very cutthroat. And that's not usually something that I've seen before. I mean, it makes a little bit more sense in Jacksonville because that was a matter of retaining your offensive coordinator versus him going for a promotion, in which case you can't block that as an NFL coach if you get a promotion, you can't block that hire. But to kind of give these guys like free reign and open the door for them to do that, the coaching hiring cycle has always been kind of a hot topic of, hey, are you punished because you're in the playoffs with a lot of teams like to get that hire done quickly, and if you're in the playoffs, then you're not really in contention for those jobs, and how much sense does that make if you're trying to turn around a franchise, yada, yada, yada. But I think this is a way to kind of mitigate some of those timeline discrepancies.
Very interesting. Well, the Bears don't have to worry about any coaching changes for right now. Looks like they're going to have a good chance of retaining the guys who were most notable to leave, and Declan Doyle and Al Harris. They are going to be back on the Bears staff, it seems, right now. And I think, we haven't seen continuity on a Bears staff in so long, especially when it comes to head coach and quarterback, knowing that you have your play caller in Ben Johnson, you have your quarterback in Caleb Williams. That's not going to change anytime soon. But down to the coordinator position coach, how important do you think that is too?
It really is. And I think especially, it's not only important for the Bears to have that continuity, but for a guy like Declan Doyle, who's young and who's just kind of getting started in this industry, to have a mentor like Ben Johnson. I think, eventually you're going to want to set him free and let him fly and all that kind of stuff.
Want to call plays.
Right, exactly. You want to give him that opportunity. But in the meantime, I think it's so beneficial for him as he's starting out his career to be able to learn what it takes to create these turnarounds and to really create a culture behind it, because outside of that, I mean, you said it, Cass, like there's so much continuity. And I think it was our friend Courtney Cronin that said there's no drama in this Bears offseason. Like, you have your quarterback, you have your head coach, and on top of that, you also got to, on the other side of the ball, you got to keep Al Harris, which he was a very hot name for some defensive coordinator positions. He's a guy that the players really respond to. And despite the fact that he's a position coach for the most part with the Bears and under the defensive coordinator, he has so much impact on how this scheme runs, and especially in that secondary, that back level of the defense. So honestly, I thought Al Harris was as good as gone, not because the Bears didn't want to keep him, but because somebody was going to poach him for a promotion.
Well, there were ties too, because he played in Green Bay. They were looking for a new defensive coordinator. He played and coached with Mike McCarthy, who goes to the Steelers. He needed a defensive coordinator, and I think you're spot on with just what he meant to the players and even the coaching staff. I had this conversation with Dan Wiederer yesterday just about Declan or Dennis Allen pointing out what Al Harris meant to him because he gave him information of seeing the game through the player's lens that a coordinator who never played at that level could never really, I guess, have any sense of what it's like to look through a helmet and stuff. So I think that's valuable too. And when you're looking at free agency, guys see all the takeaways that came from that DB's room. They want to be a part of that. That's what makes them their money in this league. So that's going to be interesting.
It's also the fun part of the job, right? It's like the gaudy stats and the celebrations and all of that kind of stuff. It's very, and that was so much of what saved the Bears defense this year. Was it really, the takeaways really masked some of the deficiencies that they'll have to address this offseason. We can get to that a little bit, but that is something that Al Harris had so much to do with why this defense was playable, why this defense was reliable in any way because of the fact that they were able to get those takeaways and give the offense extra chances.
When you talk about some of the defensive deficiencies and then you look at the NFC Championship game and the Seahawks going to the Super Bowl, did you feel like the Bears could have held their own in that game, or would that defense have been exposed by Sam Darnold and Clint Kubiak, who's going to be a candidate for the Raiders and Cardinals job?
Yeah, even more so than I think. Listen, Seattle's defense is incredible. It looks nearly unstoppable. It has been this 2-year project with Mike McDonald, who has built that team the right way. And even as earlier, as recently as this offseason, I think we were very confused as to what the Seahawks' plan was, right? If you go back to them getting Sam Darnold and trading away Cooper Kupp, and you're like, what is the Seahawks team doing? Who do they think they are? And what's happened is they are a team built on the backbone of that defense, which I think matters so much when you're talking about postseason football in particular. And then they did believe in Sam Darnold, and they gave him tools, and they gave him a complimentary run game. And it's just a very complete team right now. The Seahawks are a very complete team. So I don't think the Bears could have really, because I also think
could their offense have kept up, though?
I honestly don't know. And I think that it's hard to say because, again, what the Seattle's defense is going to limit you offensively, right? And then defensive-wise, I don't see the Bears presenting as much of a problem for that Seattle offense because I do believe in Sam Darnold. I've been a believer in Sam Darnold since Kevin O'Connell, quote-unquote, fixed him in Minnesota. And to be fair...
Or Shanahan in 2023.
Or
Shanahan he also went to his first Super Bowl.
I was going to say, he's been all over that tree at this point. But it comes down to the fact that I also think the Seahawks are going to win the Super Bowl. So I think that even with the Patriots and how much they've accomplished this season, how much Mike Vrabel has accomplished this season, how good that defense has come on recently, and how Drake May would have been my MVP candidate if I had a vote. I still think that team still has a little bit more maturing to do, and I think they're going to run into, again, a very complete team that is playing very, very well in Seattle.
When you talk about Seattle's defense and how they kind of structured it, what notes would you advise the Bears to take from that? Because we know there's holes on the defense. We know they can't bring back a lot of the stars, especially in the secondary. And I think more importantly, we know they need to get pressure on a quarterback from their front four, and that just hasn't happened under Ryan Poles yet. Right,
and that's the thing that Seattle does so incredibly well is they get pressure with four. And that allows them to keep more DBs in the backfield, the defensive backfield, that allows them to still garner takeaways, but still getting pressure. Getting pressure with four is so incredibly important, especially in what is a 4-3/4-2-5 defense that Dennis Allen runs or that happens in Seattle. It's getting those edge guys are so incredibly important. And the body type of those edge guys is so specific. It's not the same as a 3-4 defense where you have these outside backers that are a little bit more agile, a little bit more like they're faster, that kind of stuff. 4-3 DNs have to be big, tall, set the edge type guys. They have to have power, they have to have speed. I mean, it's a really tough position to play, and it's a really tough position to hit a home run on, regardless on if you draft a guy or if you go after a veteran. It's a hard position to fill, but it's so incredibly crucial. So that's something that Seattle does incredibly well that I would love to see the Bears kind of get better at.
When you talk about the edge and the prototype of body type looking at that position, would you feel like Austin Booker fits that? Because he's big and tall, but he has a different, he has very long legs.
Yes.
And he's still obviously coming into his own as a young player.
He's got the length, which I really appreciate, and he's very powerful too, right? We've seen that. We've seen some of the hard hits and maybe some of the questionable hits, depending on if your team was playing the Bears.
Or a Bears fan?
Exactly. But I do think that he fits that prototype well. I would love to see him continue to kind of evolve and improve, but I also need there needs to be someone on the other side of him that is wreaking absolute havoc. And whether, again, that's something that comes through the draft or if that's someone, if it's someone the Bears go after in free agency, I do think, the Bears have a limited amount of cap this year.
Yeah.
I say that in quotations, though, because essentially you can manipulate the cap however you want to. And the way that you do that is the structuring of certain deals, the restructuring of other deals. You can free up cap space that way, turning some, salary into an upfront contract bonus or this, that, the other. There are plenty of ways to get creative with that accounting. It's just a matter of if the Bears have the means to do that, because it does require more money up front. It requires you to spend more money on the roster, even though it's a salary cap league. The teams that do this well, i.e. teams like the Eagles, for instance, they're still putting up a lot of money in upfront so that they can structure these contracts with limited dead money. And, sometimes that even means pushing some of these contracts down the line. You have some of those void years and you kind of defer it. And that will come due eventually too. So again, it's promising money in the future. It's also providing money up front. There's ways to get it creative, but the Bears are going to have to figure out what their limitations are in that if they want to go after some of these big time guys.
Yeah, the top free agent is going to be Trey Hendrickson on the edge. He's 31 years old, went through an injury this season. And, 2 years ago or coming into last season, he was part of all the Bengals drama that he wanted a new contract. And then you talk about the money that the Bears will have available to him and his age, because 31, you're now on the back half of your career and wondering if you can be the sack leader like he was a handful of years ago. Do you like that direction, or do you prefer going young as an edge position and trying to build, because it's basically the window is now down to 2 years with the guys on the offensive line and their contracts and how it's all structured. Do you go old, experienced, proven, or do you go young and you only have the 25th overall pick, not a top 10 pick anymore?
Not a top 10 pick anymore, but this is kind of a good class to not have a top 10 pick as far as defensive end and even defensive tackle. Kind of the entire defensive line is a pretty deep class this year if you start looking towards the draft class. Guys like TJ Parker out of Clemson, he's impressing at the Senior Bowl as we speak, and I think that he would be someone that could be available towards the back half of that round. Cassius Howell out of Texas A&M is another guy that I think could be available at that point where you don't have to spend a premium top 10 pick because the Bears don't have that, nor do you want to leverage any sort of capital you do have to move up. But I do think that it's a deep class when it comes to that. You can still get an impact starter at the place where the Bears will be picking in the first round. That being said, I do love Trey Hendrickson. I love the way that he plays the game. He plays so incredibly hard, and you can see how passionate he is. And the fact that he is 31 and he's coming off an injury, I really think could work in your favor as far as how much money you would have to pay.
Garner as much.
Exactly. And I think that's a really good opportunity for a player that I think still has a lot of juice. So, and would be a perfect fit when you're talking about, again, a 4-3 defensive end. That is Trey Hendrickson.
All right, well, let's talk about the offensive line. They finally created an award for these guys.
Finally!
The Protector
I like to think I had a little bit to do with that for how much I talk about these guys.
You do like talking about offensive linemen. They are so important to an entire offense in the locker room, as we learned from Joe Thuney this season. He is one of the finalists for that award, so deserving as a 4-time Pro Bowler, 3-time first-team All-Pro, 4-time Super Bowl champion. And he was the guy that really Ben Johnson said, he knows how to refocus everyone in the locker room, and how coming off an emotional game week 18 when they lost to the Lions, how do you get right as you're welcoming in the Packers and the wild card? He really deserves a lot of credit for that, and also for the way Caleb Williams and this run game operated as well.
Absolutely. I mean, you cannot undervalue what the interior, especially of this offensive line, was able to do this season, and how crucial it was to this turnaround and to Caleb Williams' development and to the way that Ben Johnson's offense was installed. And this is something that, and it's why I loved Ben Johnson when he was in Detroit. I started covering him as he took over the offensive coordinator position in Detroit. And what I loved so much, and we've heard it time and time again from these guys in the locker room, is how much he values the offensive line and how much he makes sure that they understand how pivotal they are to the offense.
I'll never forget Darnell Wright talking about that.
That was exactly what I was thinking of, was Darnell Wright saying, he does such a good job of telling us how important we are. And I think that's something that gets lost a lot of times with the offensive line, because essentially if you hear your name, it's not a good thing.
Right.
But the way that this interior in particular and the leadership that Joe Thuney has brought, that is something that is so crucial to why this happened for the Chicago Bears. It also, I mean, I look at a guy like Drew Dahlman. I was so excited about that pickup because of the fact that he is a veteran center. He's the son of a coach. He's very, very football intelligent. He's intelligent in general. He went to Stanford. Right, exactly. And he was going to be able to take some things off of Caleb Williams' plate while Caleb Williams was getting things like his footwork and the route timing down and all that kind of stuff. Drew Dahlman's in front of him calling out like, okay, hey, this is where the pressure's coming from. This is the Mike linebacker. This is that, and the other thing, which the center-quarterback relationship is just so incredibly important. And then you have a guy like Jonah Jackson who had the familiarity with Ben Johnson. So he's a veteran guy that's bringing in familiarity with what Ben Johnson wants to do. All three of those guys complemented each other so well and really just kind of led the offense, I think, as Caleb Williams was getting his footing. And I think we saw, later on in the season where Caleb came into his own and Caleb he kind of took command of the offense and he became the leader. But I don't think that happens without those interior guys in particular on the offensive line.
Yeah, I'm in agreement too, because I feel like Caleb Williams, his first year, he was sacked however many times. He led the league 68 times. And so I think he was asked, like, do you start seeing ghosts? And he's like, no, I wouldn't do that. But there has to be something internal when you're constantly wondering how your protection is going to hold up. And to have that taken care of in year two, while he is still learning a new offense, I think was vital. And how he felt back there in the pocket gave him some time to throw some of those crazy plays that we saw, especially towards the end of the season. And I think that offensive line being together for another year, left tackle is obviously going to be a question mark with Ozzie Trapillo out deep into next season, is going to be one of the main keys as to why they take the big jump from year 2 to year 3 in Caleb Williams and year 1 to year 2 in Ben Johnson's system. Carmen, appreciate you coming on the show.
Oh my gosh, so much fun. Anytime, Cass.
You're going to the Super Bowl.
I'm going to the Super Bowl. I will be there. And my Fox Sports radio show, actually, we will be broadcasting live from Radio Row on YouTube Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday morning Pacific time. So I believe it's 8 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Central. And I'm really excited about that. I'm so excited to be at yet another Super Bowl.
Really quick, what's the best part about Radio Row? Because there's so much that's happening. You see so many people. It's like, it's a scene.
Honestly, this is so funny. Last year, the best thing about it was Bounty had a setup where they were giving out free chicken wings. And the funny part is when you're at Radio Row, it's so hard to leave and come back and nobody eats. And so it was just we all lived on chicken wings and we all met over at the Bounty booth and just got chicken wings together. It was like the meeting place. It was hysterical. It was like the equivalent of a Radio Row bar, but it was for chicken wings. But little things like that, little activations and seeing everybody, everybody's all in one place. Everybody's concentrated in one place. So you really can't go more than 10 feet without seeing someone that you like.
Free food always wins over the media.
Oh my God, always, always.